We wake up every single day and just assume reality is solid, right? We trust that time moves forward, that the ground won't fall out from under us, and that the universe follows a set of unbreakable rules. But what if everything we know is wrong? As we dive into this explainer, we're going to look at some data sitting quietly in peer-reviewed journals. And I'll warn you right now, it paints a much darker picture. The absolute deepest discoveries we've made in recent decades point to something genuinely terrifying. Reality itself might be fundamentally broken.
Think about this for a second. Why do you actually exist? I mean, mathematically, you really shouldn't. The standard model of particle physics is literally one of the most rigorously tested, rock-solid frameworks in human history. But if you run the exact math of the Big Bang, the universe was supposed to create perfectly equal amounts of matter and antimatter. And you know what happens when matter and antimatter touch, right? They annihilate each other. Completely. In the very first second of creation, everything should have just canceled out into absolute nothingness.
So we're caught in this completely terrifying gap. On one hand, the most precise equations we have predict an infinite void, just pure light and total emptiness. But on the other hand, look around. We have our undeniable observed reality. We've got massive galaxies, deep oceans, and, well, conscious beings like us sitting here thinking about it. Makes your everyday worry seem a little smaller, doesn't it? Physicists actually have a name for this impossible discrepancy. They call it the baryogenesis anomaly. And the entire explanation for why we are here at all relies on a single, mind-bending clue.
I want you to focus on this exact number, 1,000,000,001. In the unimaginable fires of the early universe, for every 1,000,000,000 antimatter particles that were created, roughly 1,000,000,001 matter particles were made. Just one, tiny, inexplicable surplus particle per billion. And that single leftover glitch, replicated across the entire cosmos, is the literal reason you have a body, a planet, or a universe to call home. Science has absolutely no complete explanation for why it wasn't a perfect one-to-one tie. And guys, that is exactly where our grasp on reality starts to crack. But the mystery gets even stranger. It's not just our origin story that's falling apart. The literal architecture of the cosmos is fracturing too. For decades, the rule was simple. Galaxies can only form and hold themselves together if they're wrapped in these massive, invisible halos of dark matter. That was a law. But then, in 2018, astronomers looked 65 million light-years away and found NGC 1052 DF2. It's this ghostly phantom galaxy. What scientists discovered next shocked the entire astronomical community. It had almost zero dark matter. It was somehow holding itself together in direct defiance of literally everything we thought we knew about how the universe is built.
And if our understanding of galactic structure is failing, well, our grip on the fabric of space itself is completely shattering. This brings us to the Hubble tension. Two incredibly brilliant, hyper-precise teams tried to measure how fast the universe is expanding. One team looked at the cosmic microwave background using the Planck satellite. The other team used the James Webb Space Telescope to look at distant stars. The results? They completely contradict each other, and we're talking about a 5 sigma significance here. In plain English, the chance of this being a simple measurement error is less than 1 in 3.5 million. Something is measurably, fundamentally wrong with space itself.
So, what if the physical universe isn't what we think it is? Back in 2022, physicist Melvin Vopson published a peer-reviewed paper that made a lot of people in the academic establishment extremely uncomfortable. He proposed something called the second law of infodynamics. You know how physical entropy just gets messier and more chaotic over time? Vopson noticed that information entropy in isolated systems does the exact opposite. It actually decreases. The truly unsettling part? This behavior mathematically mimics exactly how a computer system optimizes and compresses redundant data.
10 to the power of 80. That is a massive, almost incomprehensible number. But it's actually the estimated total number of bits of information encoded in the entire observable universe. Vopson's math shows that this staggering figure perfectly aligns with the exact kind of data structure you would find in a simulation. It's like the universe is actively cleaning up its own redundant code. Reality has literally left a testable fingerprint suggesting that the true bedrock of existence isn't matter and it isn't energy, it's information.
The implications of this are absolutely terrifying. If our universe is compressing information exactly like a software program compresses data, then those unbreakable laws of physics we trust so much, they might not be fundamental laws of nature at all. They might literally just be lines of code. But if you pull that thread, it raises an even bigger question, one that scientists find incredibly hard to sit with. If the universe is code, who wrote the source code? And do they still have access to it? Okay, let's step away from the illusion of matter for a second and look at the illusion of time. According to the most successful equations we have in quantum gravity, Time doesn't actually flow. It's a complete illusion. This brings us to something called the block universe interpretation of relativity. In this model, the past, the present, and the future don't happen in a sequence. The exact moment of your birth, the moment you are experiencing right now listening to me, and the exact moment of your death, they all exist simultaneously and permanently as fixed coordinates in a rigid, four-dimensional structure. You aren't moving through time at all. You're just a static point trapped in the block.
And if time is an illusion, space might just be a trap. For 50 years, physics was haunted by a massive paradox. Black holes seem to destroy information completely, which is a massive violation of the core rules of quantum mechanics. To rescue the laws of physics, scientists recently came up with a wild idea. Data isn't destroyed, it's preserved in what they call quantum islands. But to accept this, you have to accept a reality-breaking concept. The space inside a black hole has to be secretly entangled with the space outside of it. It completely rewrites our deepest intuitions about what distance and space-time actually mean. So, if the cosmos is just this broken, entangled machine, what exactly does that make our minds? Enter Integrated Information Theory, or IIT. There was this huge 20-year study called the Cogite Project that tried to pinpoint the exact source of consciousness, but it ended in deep uncertainty. IIT, however, proposes something absolutely staggering. It says consciousness isn't some magical, mystical spark. It is literally identical to a mathematical quantity called phi. According to this theory, any system with a high enough phi value isn't just metaphorically aware, it is literally mathematically conscious.
Let that sink in for a moment, because if IIT is correct, consciousness hasn't just been around since humans evolved. It's existed since the very first complex quantum interactions right after the Big Bang. We're not talking about human consciousness, but a measurable cosmic experience, which means every equation we write, every telescope we point out into the dark, silent void, that's not just humanity looking out. It is the universe itself, possessing its own form of experience in the literal act of examining its own nature.
But there is a dark twist here. This conscious universe, it's dying. And it is dying so much faster than we ever thought. We always knew that massive black holes would eventually, slowly evaporate over unimaginable stretches of time. But recently, researchers at Radboud University pushed Stephen Hawking's math even further, and they discovered something truly chilling. Hawking radiation isn't just for black holes, it applies to everything. In 10 to the power of 90 years, even the moon will evaporate. Absolutely everything is slowly dissolving.
We tend to think of the vacuum of space as just a static, empty background. It's not. It is an active process, and that process has a very specific direction: total erasure. Every towering mountain, every dead star, every single remnant of every civilization that has ever existed in the cosmos is actively being dissolved by the universe itself, one invisible quantum fluctuation at a time.
And the terrifying part? That erasure might not be a slow, gradual fade. Our very own mathematical models predict invisible mechanisms of sudden, instantaneous death. Right now, as we speak, there are up to 100 million invisible rogue black holes drifting completely silently through our galaxy. Our math, derived from cosmic inflation, predicts multiverse bubble collisions that travel at the speed of light. Or consider false vacuum decay, a random quantum fluctuation that could create a bubble of true vacuum, expanding at light speed, instantly rewriting the laws of physics. We would receive absolutely zero warning before our existence simply ended.
But while we're constantly looking up at the stars for threats, we might be totally blind to what's hiding right next to us. Remember when scientists detected anomalous phosphine gas on Venus? It was a massive wake-up call about how incredibly narrow our search for life really is. Some scientists have even proposed the shadow biosphere, the idea that there was a second, completely independent origin of life right here on Earth. Because our instruments are only calibrated to detect our specific type of biology, life forms using a fundamentally different biochemistry would be entirely invisible to us. Think about that. We might have been sharing our planet with a form of alien life for billions of years without ever even knowing it.
The mystery takes an even darker turn when we stop looking outward and start looking at ourselves. 108 billion. That is the estimated number of human beings who have ever lived and died on this planet. Now, I know that sounds like a massive, comforting number, but in the realm of statistical probability, it's actually a ticking clock. And it sets the stage for a mathematical proof that cosmologists have been completely unable to dismiss or disprove for 4 decades.
It's known as the doomsday argument, formulated by physicist Brandon Carter. And the scariest part is, it doesn't require any exotic physics, just strict cold probability. It states that if you consider yourself a randomly selected human from the entire timeline of our species, statistically speaking, you are extremely likely to be somewhere near the middle of the sequence, not the beginning. This math implies there is an absolute statistical limit to the total human sequence, probably capping at roughly 200 to 300 billion individuals, which means, mathematically, we are rapidly approaching the absolute end of our species.
So why is our end seemingly guaranteed? It really comes down to two terrifying theories. First is the Great Filter, which suggests there's a specific developmental hurdle that simply destroys almost all life before it can spread. But the second theory, the anthropic shadow, is so much darker. It argues that the reason we don't see historical evidence of massive cosmic catastrophes isn't because they're rare. It's because they are so common, they completely erase civilizations before those civilizations can ever leave a record. The fact that we don't have data on our own destruction isn't proof that we're safe. It is proof of total, unavoidable annihilation.
Our very existence is an impossible mathematical anomaly. We survived an inexplicable particle imbalance at the dawn of time. We currently sit in a universe that looks like optimized, decaying software code, and we are quite literally surrounded by invisible cosmic executioners. We are just an improbable glitch, temporarily staring out into a totally empty, silent sky. If our continued survival defies literally all cosmic probability, what does the absolute silence of the universe tell us about everyone who came before?